Pasha Pablo, thank you for tuning. Look, just want to come to you real quick, man. Having a great little moment here, so thought I'd share it with you. Um, was on LinkedIn on a platform. If you don't know already, holla at me on LinkedIn. We building, and there was a great post that was said because I'm always adding value. You guys know me, the black sheep of the family, the workplace, the city, the nation, the United States, whatever, right? But it's because a lot of people aren't really receptive to the truth. So when I see people that have the capacity to be given new information and they're able to mentally process it, like they've reached the level of consciousness, um, of acceptance, they're acceptable, they're accepting of new information. I get really excited because you don't understand, right? So let's take a look at this post and we'll have a great time. We're only gonna spend a few minutes on it. It's gonna be an informal. Normally I come on, I got the whole presentation, I got cue cards, I got all this stuff for you. I just want to dive into this real quick, on and off, and let's get back to the day because it's something that's really, really common, right? And I want to take a moment to talk about it because I know this firsthand. So let's look at it. What the post is about is it's talking about what they're going to label a bad hire and the effect that the bad hire has on the rest of the environment, basically, right? Note they're going to phrase it as the bad hire is creating a toxic environment. And I wanted to provide a first impression to most people. Um, so this post was from Zan Marcusi. She's with Confetti. She's the founder of Confetti, and this is a Confetti post, just so you know. And I commented on it and I reposted with my thoughts, and I was really appreciative that she was of the mentality of the conscious level to actually, once I gave the information and made it present, she did follow up and say, "Hey, I appreciate your take here, Pasha." Right? So that's where the ended as, but let's see how it started. So the post part goes, in one of the previous sales orgs, there was a rather toxic BDR. I guess it has something to do with sales, whatever. Um, the numerous interpersonal issues they caused and escalated regularly took up time in leadership meetings. This person was technically a high performer. This is key, right? Definition: exceeding quota, which made some leaders hesitant to push him out, right? So unfortunately, he was allowed to stay on. Listen to how this, and when you're hearing this, think about in the comments, this is how you would perceive it too, or have you seen this how similar things are looked at your workplace, etc., right? So it says, unfortunately, he was allowed to stay on. Despite numerous coaching attempts, he continued to cause contention between individuals and departments, spread quote unquote negative sentiments, and create territory disputes where they weren't necessary. You know the type, right? And this is the truth is all of this is what you hear. So it's not even, this could be any one of millions of people having the same post. So it's not even like a finger pointing at anybody. This is the general consensus when people don't understand that they don't know what they don't know, right? So we're gonna cover this real quick, in and out. So the number of hours management devoted to cleaning up his messes far outweighed the amount of pipeline he brought in. This experience highlighted for me that they're saying a bad hire isn't just a mistake, it's a momentum killer. A bad hire doesn't just cost their salary, they cost time spent managing poor performance instead of building the future. Moral top talents burns out faster, experiencing or fixing their mistakes, right? Culture misalignment derails your team's focus and trust. And the ripple effect they're claiming is lost revenue, slower growth, and turnover from employees who deserve better. The hidden cost of a bad hire can make or break your momentum when it matters the most. That's why hiring isn't just filling a seat, it's investing in your company's future. When you hire right, your team accelerates. When you hire wrong, it costs you more than you realize. And for the people who just go with everything at first glance, that sounds like an amazing stance. It's a great attitude. Yeah, they must be causing a problem. Get rid of those people causing a problem because they're causing a problem. Problems cost. But were they the problem, or did they reveal the true problem? And that's what we gotta find out. So let's look at what the video part real quick. It's only a few seconds long. And I'll play that for you. It's a short, so it's 60 seconds. Let's watch this real quick.
A bad hire costs you money and momentum. Startups and fast-growing teams, just listen up. Bad hire is not just a mistake. It is a momentum killer, and it costs significantly more than just their salary. A bad hire doesn't just underperform in a silo. They pull down everybody else around them. They disrupt workflows. They cause mental and emotional stress as they're trying to fix problems. The ripple effect, massive, right? When you're focusing on fixing constant issues and addressing problems, you do not get to focus on building the future. However, when you have a good hire, when you hire right, it multiplies your opportunities. The hidden costs of a bad hire can look like this: higher turnover of great employees who are leaving a toxic work environment, slower progress as you're stuck managing poor performance, and culture when you need alignment the most. A bad hire isn't just a setback, it's a risk you can't afford, so take the time to get it right.
So again, at first glance, and I want to go back to here. So when I come back, so at first glance, sounds like it makes sense, right? That's the beauty. I didn't plan for this part of it in my thought process, but that's actually also the significance of what we call projection in psychology. When your brain justifies what it wants to believe, it projects onto everything so that it fits the equation that it wants to believe. So let's look at the or statement, right? Because I was the or. I lived this experience. I was the guy and still am the guy. Look at y'all on some of these social medias and stuff, right? I know the effect that I have on some of you. This is what you're saying about me too sometimes, but I'm also the fucking best, right? And then you go, well, you don't need to be like, no, the problem is you don't. Anyway, look, let's look at it like this. The irony that poor leadership hates being invalidated by this is this. So in her example, she quotes, and this is very important. You guys know I like to win court cases, right? Mock trials, even if you want to call this stuff why I like these, because we're exercising truth versus emotion. Because when you give blanket statements, which I'm really on a tangent from all of 2024, I'm just seeing how blanket statements are just destroying culture, right? And it's not necessarily a person's fault that's delivering the blanket statement, because they're just so used to blanket statements. And it makes sense when you don't know, when you haven't yet grown to the point to know that you don't know what you don't know, right? So the blanket statement of bad hire. Okay, let's look at this. So they made in the example, this person was technically This was quoted. This person was technically a high performer. Definition exceeding quota, which made some leaders hesitant to push them out. Now, what that says to you, remember you played them little games that they give you five statements and you got to put in all the little circles and the X's and find out the true who's, where, did what, when, where, what, where, and why off of like 4 statements. This is where those games come in handy, right? Y'all playing the wrong games when y'all was younger. That's all. That's why y'all got so many friends. So now what that means is that the leadership, that business, that company wasn't used to having high performers. It means they didn't have a lot of high performers if they are. Maybe they had a couple. Because if they had a significant amount of high performers, it wouldn't have been a question if they really truly felt like they needed to get rid of this one person. It wouldn't have been no question, no thought process, no decision. Let's go. Okay? So that's number one. They weren't just a high performer, they were really good. Okay? So I'll continue. The reason leadership didn't want, this is my response. The reason, or let's say my observation and experience too included, but the reason leadership didn't want to push him out is because they didn't have many high performers, or at least not enough, or the decision would have been easy. Why is that? Because leadership and that never studied what it takes to be a high performer. They were too busy studying what it takes to be accepted by a group of mediocrity. I'll say that again for you. How they got there and how your company got there and how your culture got there is because they never studied what it takes to be a high performer. They were too busy studying leadership, HR, what it takes to be accepted by a group of mediocrity. What does that mean? The paradox of leadership, when organizations prioritize conformity over performance, they don't just make one bad hire. They create an environment where mediocrity thrives. And then a single high performing disruptor often exposes not their own shortcomings, but rather illuminates now how many suboptimal hires preceded them. See, the problem wasn't the overperformer. The problem is they didn't know they had a bunch of mediocrity prior. Or they did, or they didn't. Either way, it comes at cost. So true leadership excellence isn't measured by group acceptance, but by the courage to champion genuine or authentic in this case, because we're going to deal with the check boxes. You want to check off the boxes and make sure they qualify as high performance, even when it challenges the status quo. But see, the problem is it's easier for all to be weak than to make many become strong. So that's why they turn to gaslighting the one as a bad hire, and they're running to HR to complain, and they're running to management to complain, and they want to say something is wrong with this one. But you know the golden rule. Whenever you point your finger at one, there's 3 pointing back at you. And they're your own. But do the motion. Your hand like this. When you point a finger, there's 3 pointing back at you. Like, people want to snitch on you for breaking a rule or something, but they didn't tell on themselves when they broke the rule or another rule. Or somebody snitch on you from seeing you but didn't snitch on the next person. That's where you get discrimination and prejudice, right? So they want to single out the one as being the bad because they haven't yet learned that they're really the problem. So to save face on the realization, let's say that there was 20 people in that in that sales team. Let's say they had 3 that were good, right? They had 3 high performers before he got there. Now, I'm not saying he was the best or whatever, but he was top. He was up there somewhere because they didn't want to let him go. So he was, if not the best, he was pretty close. But let's just say they had 3, just to make the math make sense. So if they had 3 before, but the problem with those 3, right? Summarizing what I put here is those 3 are also, they might have been high performers compared to the other 17 that just didn't realize that they were just mediocre. So they didn't really have the 3 might not have really been high performers, but they were high compared to what the 20 in the group, right? But that means that they're closer to being just like the 20 and the other 17. So they have a higher affinity of wanting to be accepted and care about all that bullshit that don't matter, right? By the group. So then you get a real true high performer that comes into play. A real overachiever, a real extraordinary, a real proud, which means noble, splendid, excellent, but you're surrounding them with a bunch of humble people, meaning not proud. The one's presence magnifies not that they're the bad hire, but it magnifies leadership's prior 17 mistakes. So it's easier in 17 mistakes being higher than the other ones. So at that point, the damage control, mentally, the projection issue, and weak-minded, it's easier to say that they made one mistake hiring this great overachiever versus admitting and never realized in life that they made the 17 mistakes, right? And then they'll never get to experience what the company would be like if they actually went and got 18 high achievers, because they wanted acceptance over performance. They wanted peace over dominance in their market and sustainability. So they kept all the crybabies happy and they got rid of the one that was actually doing shit. And then the one that's actually doing shit got to go through all this extra hurdles because he's dealing with all these people who want to put roadblocks up because they're crybabies. So the one's presence magnified leadership's prior 17 mistakes. So it's easier to say they made one and never realized life with 18 high achievers because they wanted acceptance over performance. Now, what you guys need to accept as a business owner, a manager, a leadership position, or the crybaby, or if you're the one being targeted by the whole group as the overachiever, this actually decreases customer value because you're getting rid of the person who actually cares the most about being successful and bringing high quality, high value in exchange for the people who just want their paycheck, who just want their hours. They're not going after it like the other one. It decreases the community value because now if your company is $1 million a year company, you only have a budget to buy $30,000 worth of turkeys for the community because you haven't learned not to invest turkeys into people, but to give them something to put them in a position where they won't need turkeys next year. But you spend 30,000 because you only made $1 million. But if you had 18 high achievers instead of just the one you just got rid of because of the crybabies, you would do $7.5 million next year. So you're comfortable with the 1 million and a bunch of crybabies. So it affects your community value because you can't invest in the community because you don't have the other $7 million that you would have had if you had 18 motherfuckers that would go get the shit. And then that makes the company less sustainable. And Pasha's here to show you what sustainability looks like. So all of that makes the company less sustainable. And if the company's less sustainable, then the community it supports also becomes less sustainable. Why? Because your leadership wasn't strong enough to overcome 17 crybabies. So they got rid of the one wolf of Wall Street. Instead of going to get 17 more just like them. So the 17, now look at it like this, right? The 17 be like in the environment, let's say they're in the break room. You pick whoever group, however many they are of the 17 crybabies, they're going to be like, oh no, here comes such and such. Right? They got one person that they're like, oh no, here comes one person. But such and such has the perspective of actually being completely surrounded and feels the same way multiplied by 17 plus leadership. And then leadership wonders why the reports keep coming back that the one seems to be a problem. See, they just have to worry about the one. When the one come in the break room, oh man, here goes such and such. He always be trying to hype you up and tell you can get an extra sale. Be so tired of that month, right? Versus his perspective is everywhere I go, I gotta deal with these people. See, he's completely surrounded by what's looking to him as toxicity. And then how long do you take being inundated and submerged and through osmosis with toxicity before you want to do something about it? Naturally. The problem is the 17 people thought he was the problem because they didn't realize they're the toxicity. So often the one has the solutions and the 17 don't appreciate the inertia that's placed on them. And that's why there's voltage, a potential difference in these companies, in your relationships, in your communities, but there's no power. And leadership is used to having to use force instead of power to get the little mediocre results that they achieve. And they write on their annual whiteboard totals, tallies at the Christmas party and celebrate how well they did, not realizing they only did 1/8 of what they could have done. The word proud means noble, excellent, and splendid. But leadership values the humble. And humble means not proud. So what that does in our companies, our communities, and your relationships, the humble campaign, as I call it, alienates, ostracizes, and outcasts all of our noble, excellent, and splendid people, places, and things. And you wonder why you wake up one day and you have nothing to be proud of. See how ignorance in leadership, transactional leadership, which is why we must convert to transformative. But do you see how ignorance in leadership causes the decreased community value and affects our national GDP? because you could be doing 8 times what you did last year, but you guys would rather promote a recession. You guys would rather talk about we're on the verge of a depression because that's easier, because then you can go to work and deal with your mediocrity and be accepted and comfortable. And the one that could have saved the company and the world, you got rid of. So let's look back at this one section here, just where she put up the words.
Of great employees who are leaving. A cost of a bad hire can look like this: higher turnover of great employees who are leaving a toxic work. You hire right, it multiplies your opportunities. The hidden costs of a bad hire can look like this: higher turnover of great employees who are leaving a toxic work.
I know I chopped it up, my bad. So, but she's saying there is the cost, the hidden cost of a bad hire is great employees leaving the toxic workplace. The problem is you didn't realize that you got rid of the great employees and kept the bad hires in your workplace, your relationship, the community leadership structure.
Work environment, slower progress as you're stuck managing poor performance.
Bam, she didn't even realize how true that was. Slower progress as you're stuck managing poor performance. Because, like I said, if you had 17 of them, you'd be doing 8 million a year. But because you got rid of them and kept the 17 mediocrity, you're only doing 1 million a year. And your brain justified that you got rid of someone who was interfering with progress, and you don't even realize you're now managing slower progress because you're left now making 1 million instead of 8 million. That's slower progress. But then that same leader would be offended if you said they were retarded, because they don't know the word retard means slow. What was the next one?
Culture, when you need alignment the most. A bad
Culture, when you need alignment the most. You could have been aligned on $8 million a year. Instead, you were aligned in getting rid of the best employee that you had, so the crybabies could be at peace. And you wonder why I don't give a fuck about your feelings.